And also item 24.
Very good. So turning now to AB 2228, this bill deals with certification of code enforcement officers. And this bill really grows out of the city of Rancho Cordova experience. I was the founder of a city. We had a Air Force base, which had been in Rancho Cordova since 1918, which closed in 1996. We saw a tremendous decline in the community. When I went door to door promoting cityhood, people would say things to me like they felt my city had become the dumping ground of the county, or even more memorably, that we had become the armpit of the county. So there was this perception that you had a community that was just kind of falling apart.
And let me just say,
Yes.
we have 10 more bills.
Okay,
for the
very good.
committee.
So
And no opposition, right?
this bill will establish a certification program which I believe will enhance the skills of code enforcement officers. And my city demonstrates that code enforcement officers who know how to work with their law enforcement partners in the community can do a great deal in aging neighborhoods to kind of just help improve the quality of community life and, clear up obvious problems and improve property values. So it's really a way to leverage past investment by kind of raising the standard on code enforcement officers. I have Carrie Simpson, my city's lead code enforcement officer. Carrie, if you will briefly address the committee.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair and Senators. Carrie Simpson from the City of Rancho Cordova. I'm also the Legislative Chair for the California Association of Code Enforcement Officers. Code enforcement officers up and down the state strive to increase the quality of life for our communities, especially low-income and challenged neighborhoods. We really do bridge the gap between law enforcement, and at no time do we ever want to be law enforcement. We do care about the residents. The main two things for wanting to go forward with this bill is, one, to ensure that staff throughout organizations receive the type of training that they really need. I've been a code enforcement officer for nearly 30 years. We do need to be trained for two reasons. One, we want to be able to ensure that we don't violate people's rights. We go into people's properties, into their rear yards, we take actions against their properties, and we do not want to violate people's rights. Well-trained code enforcement staff know that that's what needs to be done. Unfortunately, other jurisdictions that don't maybe are not on that same standing. And secondly, code enforcement officers deal with some of the same people that police officers do, and we're asking that there be an overseen standard of knowing public safety, that we don't get injured and cause our respective cities and counties large lawsuits for injuries that come to code enforcement officers. So I do appreciate Assemblyman Cooley, and thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Madam Chair and members, Tim Cremoti on behalf of the League of California Cities. Glad to co-sponsor this measure with code enforcement, and pleased to work with Assemblymember Cooley. We're very much in favor of increased standardized training. It will ensure consistent enforcement, improve officer safety, and reduce potential local agency liability. We are especially interested in this measure as it will help ensure officer safety in adversarial situations.
Thank you. Others in support?
Madam Chair, John Lovell on behalf of the Association for Los Angeles County Deputy Sheriffs, the California College and University Police Chiefs Association, California Narcotic Officers Association, Los Angeles County Professional Peace Officers Association, the Los Angeles Police Protective League, and the Riverside Sheriffs Association. We're all in support. Code enforcement performs an important function. This standardization will elevate the profession, enhance safety, and address liability issues. We commend Assemblymember Cooley for bringing this measure forward. Thank you.
Thank you.
Madam Chair and members, Matt Seiberling on behalf of the California Public Parking Association, also in support. Thank you.
Thank you. Others in support? Speakers in opposition to the bill? Seeing and hearing none, Senator Glazer.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Someone who's come from a city, I appreciate the challenging job that these folks have, and I appreciate the author's efforts to try to do it better beyond your community. In the analysis provided by staff, they review a process that's in place in our government code in terms of how this licensing should be created. it appears that what you're proposing goes outside of that process. Could you address that?
Okay, here. Why am I not finding that analysis?
Mr. Lovell, would you like to help? You're
Yes.
noise at the mic.
No, the distinction here, though, is that what we're contemplating is not licensing so much as an appellation that indicates that the code enforcement officer has been trained to a certain level and accordingly is then entitled to be displayed as a certified code enforcement officer. The government code provisions refer to actual licensing. This is not a mandatory licensing procedure.
So nothing in this legislation requires the city to submit their code enforcement officers to this training or this certification?
On that issue, that's correct. It is a voluntary certification. So the way this would function, Senator Glazer, I think, is someone who wants to be in this field can pursue certification, pursue training, and then as they look to improve their position in their own local organization, they can point out that they've got these sorts of training. Doesn't affect retirement, doesn't affect their compensation directly. It allows them to say that they've had this sort of training. And I think it is, I think that, you know, as a city official, we all go to League of Cities conferences. We hear seminars on how do you improve existing housing stock, how do you raise values, how do you help older neighborhoods. I think what will happen is at those League of Cities conferences, for example, people will hear about the role of code enforcement, how it can enhance, establish older neighborhoods, the investment that's already there, the importance of training, the types of things that a certified person might get in this program, and sort of raise the bar on the profession.
Got it. And what I'm struggling with is why the state should play a role, because it's something that, as you just described, the League of Cities can do their own, privately run certification, training, oversight. If you're putting this in the statute, I'm just trying to, I appreciate the goals, right? So there's no differences there.
Well, I think because this is a role where the individuals will work hand in glove with law enforcement. I mean, in Rancho, we do a teamwork sort of thing in our neighborhoods. And so I would say that you get a uniform standard of how to work productively in your niche of code enforcement, but in concert with other city partners that might go into troubled neighborhoods. So I think it ensures that people are getting a high quality of training, uniform,
Got it,
and
yeah.
it that what they're learning in San Bernardino is the same thing they're learning in Alameda.
Got it. I'm happy to go along with the legislation today, but I do think there is a bar that says why we need to have a law. And it does seem like the League of Cities is in a position to do this type of work. And it's not as if the League of Cities is doing it inappropriately or in an inferior way that we say now we need a greater state oversight and responsibility. So it does rub against a little bit of my proclivities that there should be a law for all these things, even though your goals are admirable. And I'm happy to move it forward, but it does seem like it's kind of struggling to get over the bar for me.
Okay, well, thank you, Senator.
I think, would you like to comment
To your
from the
question,
league?
Senator Tim Cromartie again with the League of Cities. It is true that the league has a role here, but the body of curriculum is primarily designed by CalBO and the California Association of Code Enforcement Officers. And while cities can independently set training standards, there's a great deal of variation currently, which has led to liability issues. So, and that in part is dependent on the resources that are available to individual cities. What the standard in San Francisco may not be the standard in Brawley, for example. So we think this bill will go a long way toward increasing standardization. That's important from the viewpoint of addressing liability and also officer safety.
Senator Glazer, would you like to respond?
Just to close, I appreciate the thoughtful feedback. Sometimes you have to be careful what you wish for. You get the state involved in one place, and you just may not be happy where it leads.
Point
So
well made, Senator Glazer.
I'll defer to the authors on this.
Okay, would you like to close?
I request your aye vote. Thank you very much for the opportunity to be with you today.
Did anyone move the bill? Did you move the bill? Okay, thank you. Please read the roll.
Hancock.
Aye.
Hancock, aye. Anderson. No. Anderson, no. Glazer. Glazer, I. Leno.
Aye.
Leno, I. Lou.
Aye.
Lou, I. Monning.
Aye.
Monning, I. Stone.
Aye.
Stone, I.
Okay, that bill passes.
Thank you
We'll
very
hold the
much.
roll open for the absent member. Oh, no, he was here. Thank you. Assemblyman Gibson, 2 items, 2 and 9, waiting patiently for quite a bit.
This first one has no opposition.
Would note that your first bill, I believe, has no opposition.
Thank you very much, and good morning, Madam Chairwoman and members. I would like to start with Assembly Bill 920, if that's okay.
Yeah.
Thank you for allowing me to present Assembly Bill 920, which will allow the sheriffs of the county jail to use monies from the inmate welfare funds to provide assistance like work placement, counseling, education, and housing improvement for inmates within 30 days after the inmate's been released from the county jail. California has an inmate welfare fund in some counties, which help to recent release inmates re-enter society by providing basic clothing and transportation needs. AB 920 will enhance the program and give release inmates the chance to get back on their feet and to expand their scope of using for the funds for housing and education. The unique problem that face recent release inmates are increased by poverty and the lack of access to basic services. When individuals are released, they have sometimes no family, no friends to take them in to help them get back on their feet. By providing these support services, we can reduce the number of inmates who end up back in jail and provide a strong pathway towards success in their home community. Here with me to provide supporting testimony is Wayne Billowitz. Wayne Billowitz from Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department.
Good morning, Madam Chair and fellow senators. This bill is very important. It's a reauthorization of a bill that was in place many years ago, and it was really, we'd use it primarily for indigent inmates to use for education purposes and to get them enrolled into college. And it was a very successful program. We ask for your support of the bill and your aye vote, so this reauthorization. Thank you.
Thank you.
Madam Chair and members, Corey Salzillo here on behalf of the California State Sheriff's Association in support.
Thank you. Others in support?
Matt Seiberling on behalf of the Association for Los Angeles Deputy Sheriffs in support.
Stanisha Boatner on behalf of the California State Association of Counties in support. Thank you.
Maddie Hyde from the California Civil Liberties Advocacy in strong support.
Thank you. Are there speakers in opposition to the bill? Seeing and hearing none, is there a motion on the bill?
So moved.
Thank you. The bill has been moved by Senator Anderson. I just want to say this bill is obviously needed. I believe it's simply taking a sunset on a previous bill and it's extending it. But for all the reasons that the Assemblyman pointed out that this is a good bill, it would be good if we did more of it. It would be good if we used our CCP realignment money to do more of it. We would have less recidivism, more successful outcomes. But this is a very good beginning. Thank you for bringing it.
Thank you.
And would you like to close?
Respectfully ask for aye vote.
Thank you.
Hancock.
Aye.
Hancock, I. Anderson.
Aye.
Anderson, I. Glazer.
Aye.
Glazer, I. Leno.
Aye.
Leno, I. Lou.
Aye.
Lou, I. Monning.
Aye.
Monning, I. Stone.
Aye.
Stone, I.
That bill passes. And your next bill, AB 1673.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair and members. I'm going to try to be judicious with my time. Let me start off by thanking you for allowing me to present Assembly Bill 1673, which seeks to amend the definition of a firearm to ensure that law enforcement is better able to track the sale of critical gun parts. And I would like to underscore gun parts. Currently, people are able to buy lower receivers that are incomplete but can be easily converted into complete lower receivers. Complete lower receivers house the operating parts of a gun, which is what allows it to fire. Complete lower receivers requires the purchaser to undergo a background check and need for a serial number. However, incomplete lower receivers can be sold to consumers without the purchaser needing to either have a background check or a serial number on the weapon. AB 1673 would expand the definition of firearms so that an incomplete lower receiver are treated the same way as complete receivers, requiring a background check to purchasers and a serial number to identify the owner. This will give law enforcement the ability to keep untraceable guns out of the hands of people who seek to seriously harm and improve the public safety in our community. These receivers have no other purpose than to be used to make a gun, and for this reason should be registered and kept out of the hands of individuals who should not have these lower receivers in their possessions. Here with me to provide supporting testimony is Mr. Wilcox with the Brady Campaign and Aaron from the Law Center for Prevention of Gun Violence to provide supporting testimony.
Thank you. Madam Chair and members of this committee, on behalf of the Law Center to Prevent Gun Violence, I urge you to support AB 1673 to address a serious emerging hazard to public safety. The frame or receiver of a gun is such an essential part of the weapon that existing federal and California law both define the term firearm to include it without any other components. However, the unfinished blank, casting, or machine body of a frame or receiver, which may simply lack certain holes, slots, or cavities to be completed, are generally not considered a firearm under state or federal law and are therefore not subject to most of our common sense gun laws. Existing California law does treat these products as firearms when regulating licensed manufacturers. However, because this definition does not apply to the subsequent sale, purchase, or possession of these products, the market for these key firearm components remains dangerously unregulated. They may currently be sold or transferred over the internet by any seller to any person with no background check, record of sale, serialization, or waiting period required. Dangerous individuals have exploited this loophole to circumvent California's gun laws. A January 2016 EAO report to Congress recently confirmed that seizures of firearms parts, firearms made with unmarked parts, and equipment used to assemble or manufacture firearms suggest an emerging reliance by criminal organizations on this source of weapons. These individuals only had to make simple modifications with common tools to convert these products into finished form. I encourage members to visit the website of EP Armory, a Bakersfield corporation that markets assault rifle beginners build kits that promise a, quote, perfect do-it-yourself firearm process that would allow anyone to easily build their own firearm at home. Aries Armor, based in Oceanside, sells more than 75,000 of these products per year with a promise of, quote, no serial numbers, no big brother, we host build parties. I have no doubt that a great many law-abiding, responsible firearm enthusiasts attend these parties and lawfully use these products. This bill will do nothing to prevent them from continuing to do so. But we are talking about prefabricated products whose sole purpose is to assist in the assembly of a weapon that kills. And when these products are available to anyone at any time, without any oversight, dangerous people gain arms and endanger our communities. A devastating 2013 shooting spree in Santa Monica highlighted the need for this legislation when a dangerously mentally ill gunman who had failed a background check to purchase a gun was nonetheless able to lawfully acquire an unfinished receiver and assemble his own assault rifle with parts ordered cheaply online. The shooter used his home-built assault weapon to murder 5 people and shoot 4 others around the campus of Santa Monica Community College. This bill would help prevent such tragedies, and we urge your aye vote.
My name is Nick Wilcox. I'm here on behalf of the 27 chapters of the Brady Campaign to Prevent Gun Violence. We strongly support this bill. Our reasoning is adequately spelled out in our letter and fully incorporated in the analysis, so I won't go into it. But what I would like to do is convey a story that that happened to us personally. We were having our high-speed internet installed one day, and the guy who was installing the internet let us know that he also ran a side business as a machinist, and that the prime request he gets is to manufacture these blanks into fully functioning lower receivers. So I maintain that there is a thriving cottage industry out there of people who are manufacturing these blanks into fully functioning lower receivers. This is an important way in which pieces of metal become functional and firearms, and this is fueling the illegal gun market. I understand that there are definitional issues with this, but we have to get a handle on this. This is a major source of illegal guns. Thank you very much. I urge your aye vote.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Christopher Castrillo on behalf of the City of Santa Monica in support.
Thank you. Chad Andrews for the California Civil Liberties Advocacy. It's mostly been said, these can be extremely dangerous. They are entirely unregulated, and there are, in fact, people out there building these ghost guns. They're untraceable. There's no record of any kind. We are in support. Thank you.
Thank you. Speakers in opposition to the bill. Please make this for the House.
Madam Chairman, members of the committee, Craig DeLuz on behalf of Gun Owners of California and the Firearms Policy Coalition and the California Association of Federal Firearms Licensees. Let me just say that I think between the organizations represented here, we have probably some of the most preeminent firearms experts in the state, if not the country. And even we cannot determine exactly what the definition of this bill is. And understand that definitions do matter because firearms are listed in a number of different crimes, a number of new crimes are created by this, but I'll get back to that. In terms of definition, we talked about the idea of what is clearly identifiable, and I'll give you an example. This is a block of aluminum. Now, this block of aluminum is easily converted into one of these. All one needs is a CNC machine and the plans to use it. Now, I realize that it's not easily recognizable, maybe to you. Maybe if I turn it around. This is an item that I purchased from 80% Arms. It's an item that, once again, is a 0% lower. My challenge is that someone else who sees this and they recognize it as clearly identifiable to be able to make a firearm. So my question is, where do we put the serial number? This is a flat. It's an AK flat. I know it looks like just a regular piece of sheet metal with various indentions and holes in it, but someone who knows what they're doing sees this and they recognize this as something that can be used to manufacture a firearm. The average person may not. My point, once again, is this is something that's available at Lowe's. Sheet metal is available at Lowe's, Ace Hardware. And my question, once again, is it's clearly identifiable. So are people going to be purchasing these and then going to have to go and get them registered when they leave the department store or the hardware store? I've circulated around to you some pictures. Now, these are pictures of lower receivers, and they may appear to be clearly identifiable as firearms, but guess what? Those are receivers for airsoft rifles, toy guns, meaning they can never be converted into a firearm. Once again, but by the average person, the reasonable definition, one might look at it and say, well, gee, this is, it is easily recognizable. In the end, what we're doing is we're leaving it up to the average law enforcement officer, who, by the way, serves us diligently but does not make them firearms experts. We leave it up to the district attorney or the prosecuting attorney, who, once again, are not firearms experts, to determine whether or not these are firearms. All right, laws matter, and when you start changing the definition of a firearm, so when I brought this here in my bag, was I concealing a weapon? Because I didn't get a serial number, this isn't registered. Is this now against the law? Do I have to wait a 10-day waiting period? There are so many laws, new laws that are created and new potential crimes that normal, everyday, law-abiding citizens are going to be put in a position of violating as a result of this bill. Words matter. Definitions matter. And it's one thing that the definition that they use, they partially took from a part of federal code which has to do with the import and export of these sorts of items in order to make sure that we're not importing or exporting firearms parts. That's one thing. This, now we're talking about attaching criminal liability to this definition. Even your own analysis talks about the vagueness of this bill and how the vagueness of this bill puts the average citizen at risk. We urge your no vote for these and many, many more reasons.
Madam Chair, members, Roy Griffith speaking on behalf of the California Rifle and Pistol Association and the National Rifle Association. Most everything I have to say has been said, but this bill creates an enforcement nightmare based on the vagueness of it. The word readily convertible was changed to or a frame or a receiver, blank casting, or machine body that is designed and clearly identifiable. I was a range master in armor for 25 years of my career, and I don't know what that means. Again, this is another bill that only impacts law-abiding citizens. Criminals are not going to go, oh, gee, I just passed the 80% mark. I better put a serial number on this now. That's not going to happen. Criminals are still going to get guns. This is only going to impact law-abiding citizens, and for that reason, we strongly oppose.
Are there others in opposition to the bill? Seeing and hearing none, are there questions or comments from members of the committee? Senator Stone.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. While being a strong Second Amendment rights advocate, I don't own a lot of guns, and frankly, had I seen any of these items anywhere, I would have known that they were components of a gun or the beginnings of a gun. But to redefine firearm to include something like this is a fallacy. And I agree with the opponent that your criminals are not going to start building these guns and then when they get to the 80% threshold, decide they're going to go serialize them. This is basically going to hurt the hobbyists that want to build guns for hunting, target practice, and basically put law-abiding citizens in harm's way of going to jail, carrying an obscure piece of metal like that into a building and getting arrested for having what is the beginnings of the synthesis of a weapon, but it's not a weapon. And so I think we're on a slippery slope here today. And it's going to have tremendous ramifications on many, many laws that I understand the author's goal is to keep weapons out of the hands of criminals, but this is not going to do it. Criminals don't follow the laws, and they're going to continue to manufacture these rogue ghost weapons, if you will, and allow them to proliferate on the market. This is only going to make criminals out of law-abiding citizens, and so for these reasons, I have a difficulty in supporting this bill as it's written today.
Thank you. If there are no other comments, I'm wondering if the author would like to respond to the opposition, the issues raised about definitions, et cetera.
Sure. Thank you very much. I have a lot of notes, and let me just try to be very prudent with my time. I would simply say that, one, I don't think law enforcement is average. I think we're talking about people who've been trained, as I have been trained as a former police officer serving the city of Maywood when I was an officer on the streets. And clearly my training would allow me to identify a weapon. Certainly this weapon, or this right here, certainly is the makings of what could be used as a gun. The comical display of a brick metal piece. Clearly, no one would say that would be a gun. But this right here is the clearly makings of what potentially can be a gun. In addition to that, a 23-year-old young man was not a criminal until he made a gun at home. A 23-year-old young man was not a criminal when he went to Santa Monica in 2013 and took the lives of 6 individuals. He became a criminal when he used what he made at home to take and destroy life. I don't need to talk about what transpired, this past Sunday, where an individual went into a nightclub and took innocent people's lives and wounded many people. Listen, I would like to be very clear when it comes down to gun violence in America. Congress failed to do their job. California has led the way in terms of progressive legislation. This is legislation that certainly can be used. I think our pro tem, the Senate pro tem, has also put forth legislation. Our speaker has also supported H.R. 52, recognizing gun violence victims awareness day on June 2nd. This has risen to the level that California must do something. Let me bring it a little bit closer. What transpired in San Bernardino, 14 individuals were killed. I only knew one of them because that young girl who was the youngest was killed, went to high school with my son in Carson. She was a cheerleader, Aurora Godoy. She left a 2-year-old son without a mom. I don't need to mention, or maybe I do need to mention, Autumn Marie Johnson was in her crib, was shot in the head by someone who's still at large. Let me even go further. A mother and her son driving up to their driveway was shot down and killed, and the assailant is still at large. Since I've been elected to the California State Assembly, I have been going and raising my microphone during the adjournments. 90% of those adjournments have been people who have died in my community, who have lost their lives in my community. A 19-year-old girl was walking down the street just this past Saturday, was shot and killed in the back. When do I've heard the argument that we have too much regulation. Well, why is it that individuals still have guns and now has an opportunity because of technology? You can make a gun at home that has out-advanced our laws on our books. This will seek to at least close a loophole in the law so that we will attempt to try to reduce some of the gun violence that takes place not only in our communities but also in our state. And so I'll be more than happy to answer any questions that the committee may have with regards to what I just said.
Okay, thank you.
I respectfully ask for your aye vote.
Oh, you're closing. Let's see. Well, right. Is there a motion on the bill? I'll move the bill.
Madam Chair, could we hear from some of the proponents in response to some of the issues raised?
Was the Center for Gun Violence or the Brady campaign here? Yeah. The issues, I believe, have to do with the vagueness of definitions and how to handle that.
Right, so I get clearly what you're trying to do. I also understand that when something is labeled a beginner's builder kit, that's pretty clear. Do you feel that there's, number one, any vagueness in the bill? And do you feel that there's going to be any challenge to law enforcement to be able to distinguish where the line we're drawing in this bill is and what needs to be enforced, what doesn't, or any of the other concerns that were raised by the opposition?
If I may answer, So the GAO report I mentioned to Congress that made recommendations for tighter regulation of these products specifically they specifically recommended a holistic definition to avoid some of the problems we've had where the firearm industry and prohibited persons have been able to take advantage of loopholes and overly specific wording in our gun laws. We've worked, the Assembly member worked and listened closely to opponents before to tighten the definition. Existing California law does require licensed manufacturers producing products that are, quote, that may be, quote, readily converted to finished form, that treat that as a firearm. So licensed manufacturers in California are already using, I would argue, a vaguer definition without apparent difficulty. And we argue that law enforcement prosecutors would exercise reasonable discretion to not be charging grandmothers with blocks of metal, but that they would be using this definition to go after. I mean, I want to clarify that this legislation does not. It's requiring that individuals would be licensed dealers to sell these products, that they would be conducting background checks, so that we are not relying on criminals to suddenly have come to Jesus moments and apply to DOJ for serial numbers. We're relying on licensed dealers being the only individuals selling these products in person, conducting background checks, keeping records of sale, and we believe that they and DOJ would, and law enforcement, productively interpret this definition.
That is definitely helpful. Just to get a little more specific, how would a dealer, for example, read the bill and differentiate between a block of aluminum and the piece next to it?
I would assert that a block of aluminum is not, I don't have the exact language before me, but clearly and identifiably designed to enable a person to manufacture a firearm. No matter what sticker you put on it, a block of metal is not clearly and intentionally designed for that purpose. This other product is.
Designed for
Designed
one
for that purpose.
and one only purpose.
That's correct.
Thank you.
Thank you, Senator.
We had a little management change. Senator Hancock had to go present a bill. So do we have any additional questions? Senator Glazer.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I know that our community, our state, our country is feeling a lot of pain because of what happened in Orlando. And for those of us who are paying just a little bit of attention, they know that this is not something that's just a one-time thing, that we've had these issues of mass violence. And when you dig down, it's not about a criminal getting a gun, but a regular person who had access to weapons and ammunition that certainly wasn't for home protection or for hunting. But in these circumstances, we all look for constructive steps to take. What can we do differently? What could our federal authorities do? What could we within our state do? And it's a challenge because we know that there's a lot of complexity to these problems and these events. It's not simple, whether it's issues of poverty, whether it's issue of discrimination, whether it's issues of mental health, our inability of our criminal justice system to help people see a more constructive path. There's so many things that go into it, and I know that there's a desire to try to find, like, this is the answer. This bill is the answer. And I think it's a false presentation because of the bigger challenge that we face in these issues of how we make our communities safe. But we look for constructive steps, and the question is this one of them? I do know that our technology is becoming much more advanced, and what we thought was something very difficult to do can now be done in a very easy fashion. 3D printing, the ability to find parts, not just about parts for your car engine, but parts for a weapon that can cause serious harm. They are available, and they are more easily manufactured. And I think that all of us are trying to find ways to get in front of that technology change. And I think that's what the author is trying to do here with this legislation. Does it have some concerns in terms of vagueness? I think that there is some concern about that. But I guess for me, on balance, that we have responsible people in our law enforcement agencies, in our district attorney's offices. And so while I think it's not a clear call, I think it's, for me, it's an easier call to say this is a prudent step. It's not going to solve the problems as we see it. But I'm certainly feeling that it's something that we have responsible people to enforce as necessary, that some of the silliness that's been explained to us about definitions, I think, will be easily dismissed as silliness by those who engage with people who have blocks of metal. And I guess based on that, I'm inclined to support the bill today.
Thank you very much, Senator.
Is that a motion?
Happy to make the motion. I think the chair made the motion.
Yes, you did.
Oh, okay. With that, this is a due pass to appropriations. Is that correct? May we go ahead and have a roll call vote, please?
Hancock. Anderson.
No.
Anderson, no. Glazer.
Aye.
Glazer, aye. Leno.
Aye.
Leno, aye. Lou. Lou, aye. Monning.
Aye.
Monning, aye. Stone. Stone, no.
We're going to hold this open so the chair may add on. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Senators. Thank you, Senator.